Transform your life with these 10 life-changing daily habits inspired by Stoicism. Practical steps to build discipline, emotional strength, and inner peace. In this video, 10 life-changing daily habits you must work on every day become unstoppable. Stoic Breath. You'll learn how to master your mind, control your reactions, and stay focused even in chaos. Start applying these habits today and become stronger, calmer, and more unstoppable with Stoicism Breath. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe now to Stoicism Breath for more powerful insights and daily mental strength training. There comes a moment in life when you can feel it deep inside yourself, a quiet voice, or maybe a desperate one, telling you that something has to change. Not next week. Not when life feels easier. Not when motivation finally shows up. But now. Because real change does not begin when conditions are perfect. It begins the moment you stop running from the truth. And the truth is this: the greatest battle of your life is not with the world around you. It is with the part of you that keeps choosing comfort over growth, delay over discipline, and safety over transformation. On Stoicism Breath, this is where we stop pretending that potential alone is enough. Marcus Aurelius did not write for people looking for temporary inspiration. He wrote as a man carrying pressure, responsibility, and uncertainty, reminding himself to stand firm. His message still cuts through the noise today. Stop debating what a strong, honorable person should look like, and become that person. Because strength is not something you arrive at one day. It is something you negotiate daily, in your habits, your thoughts, your reactions, and the promises you keep to yourself. That is why the first practice, the foundation under everything else, is simple, but not easy. Work on your mind every single day. Your mind is your inner empire. And like any empire, it can be built with care and discipline, or slowly destroyed through neglect. Every thought you repeat becomes a pattern. Every belief you feed becomes part of your reality. Think about that for a second. If you constantly tell yourself that life is against you, that people have it easier, that you are behind, then your mind becomes a place of weakness before the day even begins. But if you train your mind with intention, if you choose clarity over chaos and reflection over reaction, then even in difficult seasons, you carry a kind of strength that the outside world cannot easily shake. The Stoics understood something that modern life keeps trying to make us forget. You cannot control everything that happens around you, but you can learn to govern what happens within you. And that changes everything. Most people put effort into improving their appearance, their income, or their image, yet they spend almost no time protecting the quality of their thoughts. They wake up and immediately consume noise. News, opinions, social media, comparison, distraction. Then, they wonder why they feel anxious, unfocused, and emotionally exhausted. But your mind was never meant to be treated like an open door for every passing fear and every random voice. It is sacred space. It is the place where your peace is either protected or destroyed. Working on your mind means becoming more selective. It means feeding yourself wisdom instead of mental junk. It means reading something that grounds you, sitting in silence long enough to hear your real thoughts, and asking yourself honest questions. Why am I reacting this way? What is this challenge trying to teach me? What belief have I been repeating that no longer serves me? These are not small questions. These are the questions that rebuild a person from the inside out. And sometimes, working on your mind means learning how to sit with your emotions instead of escaping them. Instead of constantly distracting yourself, you pause. You write. You reflect. You notice the patterns. Maybe you realize that your anger is often fear in disguise. Maybe your jealousy is showing you where you want to grow. Maybe your stress is exposing how much of your peace you have handed over to things you cannot control. That is where real self-mastery begins. Not in pretending you never struggle, but in refusing to let every emotion take command of your life. Because once your thoughts become more disciplined, your actions begin to follow. And when your actions become aligned, your life starts to feel different. Stronger, cleaner, more intentional. The truth is, your mind is always being shaped by something. If you are not actively choosing what enters it, the world will choose for you. And the world is loud, impatient, addictive, and often built to keep you distracted. So every day, you have to make a decision. Will you let the world program your fears, your reactions, and your identity? Or will you take that power back? Will you allow overthinking, comparison, and negativity to rent space in your head? Or will you build a mind that can stay calm when life gets hard? Because that is the real advantage. Not avoiding problems. Not waiting for life to become easy. But becoming the kind of person who can remain clear, grounded, and steady in the middle of chaos. That is power. That is peace. And that is where an unstoppable life begins. There is a powerful practice that most people avoid because it feels uncomfortable at first, but it is one of the strongest tools you can develop if you truly want control over your life. The Stoics called it negative visualization. Instead of constantly chasing positive outcomes or pretending everything will go perfectly, they train themselves to imagine loss, failure, and difficulty, not to suffer, but to prepare. Think about that. When you mentally face challenges before they happen, something shifts inside you. The fear begins to shrink. The shock disappears. And suddenly, you are not reacting emotionally when life gets hard. You are ready for it. On Stoicism Breath, this is where mindset becomes strength. Because when you learn to control your thoughts about pain, pain itself starts to lose its power over you. Every morning, there is a simple reminder that can quietly reshape your entire day. You cannot control the world, but you can control how you think. Traffic, delays, people's opinions, unexpected problems, none of that is fully in your hands. But your response is. Your interpretation is. Your internal dialogue is. And over time, that becomes your reality. Science even supports this idea. Studies in cognitive behavioral psychology show that the way we interpret events has a greater impact on our emotional state than the events themselves. So when you train your mind to stay steady, to look for lessons instead of threats, you are not just being positive. You are rewiring your brain for resilience. That is why working on your mind is not optional. It is the foundation. It is the difference between someone who breaks under pressure and someone who walks through storms with quiet confidence. Take a moment, breathe deeply, and anchor this thought. Your mind is your power, and it can be trained. But once you begin to understand your thoughts, the next level of growth becomes clear: your emotions. Because your emotions are incredibly powerful, but only when you are the one in control. If you have ever had a small problem ruin your entire day, you already know what happens when emotions take over. One comment, one mistake, one unexpected situation, and suddenly your peace is gone. But when you learn to manage your emotions, something remarkable happens. Even in the middle of chaos, you remain steady. Seneca once said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And if you really look at your own life, you may notice how often that is true. The stress, the fear, the anger, it is often amplified by the story we tell ourselves, not just the situation itself. Life will not stop testing you. People will misunderstand you. Plans will fall apart. You will feel anger, fear, jealousy, doubt. That is part of being human. But emotional mastery is not about eliminating those feelings. It is about changing your relationship with them. Instead of reacting immediately, you begin to observe. When anger rises, you pause and ask, "What is really happening here?" When fear shows up, you treat it as a signal to prepare, not a command to retreat. When envy appears, you use it as a mirror to show you where you want to grow. This shift is subtle, but it is life-changing. Because once you stop letting emotions control your behavior, they stop controlling your life. One of the most important skills you can build is creating a gap between what happens and how you respond. That gap might only be a few seconds, but it is where your power lives. It is the moment where you choose not to take something personally. The moment where you decide not to react instantly. The moment where you breathe instead of explode. Over time, those small moments add up. You become calmer in conversations, stronger under pressure, more grounded when life hits hard. And slowly, you begin to notice something. Other people's chaos no longer controls your peace. That is not luck. That is training. Working on your emotions every day also means accepting responsibility for your inner state. Your peace is not something you earn at the end of a perfect day. It is something you protect, moment by moment. In the morning, you set the intention, "Today, I will not be ruled by my emotions." And at night, you reflect honestly, "Did I stay calm when I was tested?" And if the answer is no, you do not judge yourself. You learn. You reset. You try again. Because emotional strength is not built in a single breakthrough. It is built in thousands of small decisions where you choose control over reaction. And then comes the next layer, the one that turns intention into results, discipline. Without discipline, even the best ideas, the strongest intentions, and the biggest dreams slowly fade away. You can be talented, intelligent, and motivated, but if you cannot stay consistent, nothing changes. Discipline is not about how you feel. It is about what you do, especially when you do not feel like doing it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this every morning. When it is hard to get out of bed, remember your duty as a human being. That means your purpose is not comfort, it is progress. And that idea is simple, but it changes everything. Because the moment you stop waiting to feel ready and start acting anyway, you begin to build a life that is no longer controlled by mood, but by commitment. There is a quiet moment every day when your mind begins to negotiate with you. It sounds harmless at first. Just 5 more minutes. You can start tomorrow. You've earned a break. But over time, that voice becomes the reason nothing changes. On Stoicism Breath, this is where discipline begins, not in motivation, but in the decision to move anyway. Because the truth is, you will almost never feel ready. You won't feel like going to the gym every day. You won't feel like doing the hard work, sitting in silence, or pushing through discomfort. But discipline was never about feelings. It's about honoring your word, especially when it's inconvenient. It's about showing up because you said you would, not because you feel inspired in the moment. Think about how often people wait for the right mood to start improving their lives. Weeks pass, months pass, and nothing changes. But the people who actually transform their lives understand something different. They act first, and the feeling follows. They build momentum through action, not emotion. And every time you follow through on something small, waking up early, finishing a task, choosing focus over distraction, you send a signal to your brain. I can trust myself. That trust becomes confidence. That confidence becomes identity. And that identity becomes your future. Discipline, at its core, is a form of self-respect. It is the way you prove to yourself that your goals matter, that your future matters. It's waking up when it's uncomfortable because you refuse to let comfort decide your direction. It's saying no to things that feel good in the moment but cost you later. It's choosing long-term strength over short-term relief. And this isn't something dramatic or loud. It's quiet, repetitive, often invisible. But it is the foundation behind every strong, focused, and successful person you admire. They didn't get there through bursts of motivation. They got there through consistency when no one was watching. A practical way to build discipline is simple, but powerful. Make one promise to yourself every day, and keep it no matter what. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, it's better if it's small. Wake up at a certain time. Complete one task before checking your phone. Take a cold shower. Go for a walk instead of scrolling. These small actions are not about the task itself. They are about training your ability to follow through. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your authority over your own life. And once your mind starts believing your commands, everything changes. You stop negotiating with weakness. You start executing with clarity. Discipline also means learning to say no. No to distractions that steal your time. No to habits that drain your energy. No to people or environments that pull you away from who you're trying to become. And every time you say no to something that weakens you, you are saying yes to something that strengthens you. It may not feel exciting. It may feel lonely at times. But that's the reality of growth. It's not always glamorous. It's not always comfortable. But it is always worth it. Because while you may not regret skipping effort in the moment, you will feel it later, in missed opportunities, in unrealized potential, in the quiet frustration of knowing you could have done more. The Stoics believe that without self-control, a person becomes a slave to impulses, distractions, and desires. And when you look around today, it's easy to see how true that still is. So the question becomes simple. Are you in control, or are you being controlled? Because the moment you begin to rule yourself, your actions, your habits, your decisions, you begin to take back control of your entire life. That's why the next time your alarm goes off and your mind tells you to stay in bed, you answer differently. You remind yourself that you have a purpose, that you have work to do, not just externally, but internally. And you move. But discipline alone is not enough if it has no direction. That's where purpose comes in. Without purpose, even the most disciplined person can feel lost. You can wake up early, work hard, stay consistent, and still feel empty if you don't know why you're doing it. Purpose is what gives your effort meaning. It's what pulls you forward when motivation disappears. It's what turns repetition into progress instead of routine. Every morning, before the noise of the day begins, there is a question worth asking. Why does this matter? Not in a superficial way, but deeply. Why are you doing what you're doing? Most people move through life on autopilot. They follow routines they didn't choose, chase goals they didn't define, and end up feeling disconnected from their own lives. But a person with purpose moves differently. They don't chase everything. They build something. They align their actions with their values. They understand that success is not just about money or recognition, but about creating meaning, contributing value, and becoming stronger along the way. Because without purpose, even freedom feels empty. The good news is, you don't need to have your entire life figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You only need the next meaningful step. One action today that moves you closer to the person you want to become. Read something that expands your thinking. Build something that reflects your vision. Help someone in a way that aligns with your values. These small, intentional steps begin to shape your direction over time. And often, it's through struggle that purpose becomes clearer. The challenges you face, the obstacles that slow you down, they are not just barriers. They are signals. They are shaping you, revealing what matters, and pushing you towards something deeper. What once felt like resistance can become your path forward. The difficulty you're facing right now might be the very thing guiding you toward your purpose. So instead of standing still, overthinking, or waiting for clarity to magically appear, you move. You try. You fail. You learn. And through that process, your path begins to reveal itself. Not all at once, but step by step. Because purpose is not found in thinking alone. It is discovered through action. There comes a point where thinking is no longer enough. You can analyze your life from every angle, plan every step, wait for clarity, but nothing truly changes until you move. On Stoicism Breath, this is the shift from overthinking to action. Because the path you're searching for is not something you find sitting still. It reveals itself when you try, when you fail, when you learn, and when you try again. That's how direction is built. Not in perfect plans, but in imperfect action repeated over time. When you remind yourself daily, I am not here to drift, I am here to build, something begins to anchor inside you. You stop chasing approval, and you start creating meaning. You stop asking for validation, and you start becoming someone your younger self would be proud of. Purpose has a strange kind of power. It doesn't remove pain, but it transforms it. The same struggle that once felt meaningless suddenly becomes fuel. The same setbacks that once discouraged you begin to strengthen you. When you know why you're doing something, you can endure almost anything. That's why people with purpose don't break easily. They bend, they adapt, they fall, but they get back up with more clarity. Because they're no longer working for attention or applause. They're working for fulfillment. And that changes how they show up every single day. But even with purpose, there's another level you must face: self-control. Because without it, everything you build can collapse in a moment. Self-control is not loud. It's not something people celebrate on the surface. But it is one of the most powerful forces you can develop. It is the difference between reacting and responding, between being driven by impulse and being guided by intention. Epictetus once said that no person is truly free unless they are master of themselves. And when you really think about it, that becomes clear in everyday life. How often do people lose control over something small, a comment, a delay, a moment of frustration, and let it ruin their entire day? Not because the situation was overwhelming, but because they gave away their power in a single reaction. Self-control is the ability to hold your ground when everything inside you wants to react. It's choosing silence when your ego wants to prove a point. It's walking away when pride wants to fight. It's choosing discipline over impulse, peace over chaos, and clarity over emotional noise. And this isn't theoretical. It shows up in real moments. When someone disrespects you. When temptation is right in front of you. When stress builds and your patience starts to fade. That's where self-control is tested. Not in calm situations, but in pressure. The strongest individuals are not the ones who dominate others. They are the ones who remain steady when life hits them hard. They don't suppress emotions. They understand them, and they direct them. They pause. They breathe. They observe before they respond. And over time, this creates a kind of inner stability that nothing external can easily shake. It also changes how you move through the world. You stop reacting to everything. You become more selective with your energy. You learn that not every situation deserves your attention, and not every conflict deserves your involvement. There is also a deeper layer to self-control that often gets ignored: your relationship with pleasure. In a world built around instant gratification, fast entertainment, constant stimulation, endless options, it becomes easy to consume without awareness. But the more you give in to every impulse, the less control you actually have. The Stoics understood this well. They practiced discomfort on purpose, not to punish themselves, but to remind themselves that they were stronger than their cravings. And that idea still applies today. Whether it's food, attention, or distraction, learning to take only what you need instead of everything you want is a form of freedom. When you begin to master your impulses, something shifts. You are no longer controlled by habits, emotions, or external triggers. You start to feel more grounded, more clear, more in command of your own life. And the more control you have over yourself, the less the world can control you. That is real freedom, the kind that cannot be taken away. And then comes patience, a quality that has become rare in a world that moves too fast. Everywhere you look, there is pressure to get results quickly. Faster success, faster healing, faster progress. But real growth doesn't work that way. It unfolds at its own pace. And often, the seasons that feel slow are the ones shaping you the most. Patience is not about doing nothing. It is about continuing to show up even when the results are not visible yet. It is trusting that your effort is building something, even if you cannot see it immediately. Think about how many people quit just before things begin to change. They stop because they assume that waiting means failure. But in reality, waiting is often where strength is built. It's where discipline deepens, focus sharpens, and ego softens. When you rush, you make careless decisions. When you try to force outcomes, you create unnecessary stress. But when you slow down and trust the process, you allow things to develop in the right way. Patience teaches you endurance. It teaches you how to stay grounded when progress feels invisible. It reminds you that you are not starting over, you are building consistency. And consistency, over time, creates results that cannot be rushed. In those moments when it feels like nothing is happening, something important is actually taking place beneath the surface. You are becoming stronger, more resilient, more prepared for what's coming next. And that is what separates those who last from those who give up. In a world that constantly pushes you to move faster, achieve more, and get results now, patience becomes a quiet rebellion. On Stoicism Breath, patience is not about waiting passively, it's about trusting deeply. Because the moment you start forcing outcomes, you begin to lose your peace. You become anxious, frustrated, restless. But when you step back and allow things to unfold in their own time, something changes. You begin to move with life instead of against it. Marcus Aurelius understood this well. He reminded himself that nothing truly great is created overnight. Growth is not built in bursts of intensity. It's built through repetition, through consistency, through showing up again and again, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Think about how often people give up simply because progress feels slow. They assume that if results are not visible, then nothing is working. But that's not how growth works. Progress is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. Just like physical health, your body doesn't transform after one workout, but every session is shaping you in ways you can't immediately see. The same applies to your mind, your discipline, your character. So when things feel slow, remind yourself, you are not starting over, you are building consistency. And consistency is what creates lasting change. There will also be moments when your effort goes unnoticed. when no one acknowledges what you're doing, when it feels like you're working in silence while others receive attention. That's where your mindset matters most. Because if you're doing this for validation, you will lose motivation quickly. But if you're doing this for mastery, for growth, for purpose, for becoming better, then recognition becomes irrelevant. Patience teaches you to detach from timelines, to focus on effort instead of outcome. It teaches you to say, I trust the process, even when you don't yet see the reward. And this is not just mental, it's emotional stability. It's learning to stay calm when plans don't go your way. It's breathing through frustration instead of reacting to it. It's understanding that delays are not always setbacks. They are often preparation. Every delay is shaping your resilience. Every obstacle is strengthening your character. Every moment of waiting is building your endurance. So instead of comparing your beginning to someone else's success, you stay focused on your path. Because your time will come, but only if you keep showing up when it's quiet, when it's hard, when no one is watching. Patience is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the quiet confidence that says, I don't need to rush. I am becoming. And from that place of calm strength, you begin to unlock another powerful discipline, silence. In a world filled with noise, silence has become rare, and that's exactly why it's powerful. Silence is not about saying nothing. It's about saying less, but with intention. It's about choosing your words carefully, instead of reacting to everything around you. Most people feel the need to respond to every opinion, defend every point, explain themselves to everyone. But that constant reaction drains energy. It pulls you into unnecessary conflict, and it takes you away from your focus. The Stoic understands something different. Not everything deserves a response. Not every situation requires your voice. Sometimes, the strongest move is to remain silent. Not out of weakness, but out of control. When you stop reacting to every insult, every misunderstanding, every piece of noise, you begin to conserve your energy. You stop feeding into chaos. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who are not willing to understand you in the first place. Silence also creates space, space to think, to reflect, to understand yourself more clearly. When you're not constantly speaking, explaining, or reacting, you begin to hear your inner voice more clearly. You begin to notice your patterns, your emotions, your direction. And when you finally do speak, your words carry more weight. They are not rushed. They are not emotional. They are intentional. There is a discipline in silence that most people overlook. It shows up in small moments. When you're angry, and instead of reacting, you pause. When you're criticized, and instead of defending, you evaluate. When something good happens, and instead of broadcasting it immediately, you sit with it, appreciate it, and let it strengthen you internally. These are not just habits. They are forms of control. And over time, they build a kind of quiet strength that others can feel, even if they can't explain it. The world often rewards noise. But real growth happens in silence. It happens when you're working without needing attention. When you're building without announcing it. When you're focused on becoming, not performing. Because true power doesn't need to be loud. It shows itself through consistency, through presence, through results. And from that silence, something else begins to grow naturally: gratitude. Gratitude is what keeps you grounded when everything around you tries to pull you into comparison, negativity, and endless desire. When you forget what you already have, your mind starts chasing what it doesn't need. You begin to feel like you're always behind, always lacking, always incomplete. But when you shift your focus, even slightly, everything changes. Gratitude is not about pretending life is perfect. It's about recognizing that even in difficulty, there is something to appreciate. The fact that you woke up today. The fact that you have another chance to try again. The fact that you've already survived things that once felt impossible. These are not small things. They are foundations. Research in psychology shows that practicing gratitude daily can significantly improve mental well-being, reduce stress, and increase overall life satisfaction. But beyond the science, there is a deeper truth. Gratitude changes how you see your life. Instead of saying, "I have to do this," you begin to say, "I get to do this." And that shift alone can transform your energy, your mindset, and your motivation. The Stoics practiced this constantly. They reminded themselves that everything they have is temporary. Every breath, every moment, every relationship. And instead of creating fear, that awareness created appreciation. Because when you realize that nothing is guaranteed, you begin to value what is here right now. Gratitude keeps you present. It softens your mind. It makes you more patient, more aware, more grounded. And in a world that constantly pushes you to want more, to do more, to be more, gratitude reminds you of something simple but powerful. You already have enough to begin. There is a subtle shift that can completely change how you experience your life. And it starts with something simple, how you frame what you already have. On Stoicism Breath, gratitude is not just a feeling, it's a daily practice that reshapes your mind. Instead of saying, "I have to," you begin to say, "I get to." That small change carries real power. You don't have to wake up early. You get another chance to live, to move, to grow. You don't have to work. You get the opportunity to pursue something meaningful, something that could shape your future. And when you begin to see life through that lens, pressure turns into purpose, and obligation turns into opportunity. Gratitude has a grounding effect that most people underestimate. In a world driven by comparison, constant updates, and endless desire for more, it's easy to feel like you're always behind. But gratitude pulls you back to what's real. It reminds you of what is already here. And when you truly feel that, envy starts to lose its grip. Fear becomes quieter. The constant need for more begins to fade. Because a grateful mind is not easily controlled by external pressure. It is anchored. It is steady. There's also something deeply practical about this. Research in psychology has shown that practicing gratitude, even briefly each day, can improve mental health, reduce stress, and increase overall life satisfaction. But beyond research, it's about perspective. Every morning, taking just a minute to name 3 things you're grateful for can begin to rewire how your brain processes the world. And at night, reflecting on one moment that made you smile, even something small, helps shift your focus from what's missing to what's meaningful. Over time, this creates a mental environment where peace becomes more natural than stress. Gratitude also softens the way you move through life. It makes you more patient with others, more aware of the present, more conscious of how temporary everything truly is. Because one day, the things you take for granted now, the people, the routines, even the quiet moments, will no longer be there. And gratitude is how you honor them while they still are. It reminds you that happiness is not found in accumulating more, but in appreciating what already exists. And something powerful happens when you begin to live this way. Even the smallest things start to feel meaningful. A quiet morning, a deep breath, a moment of calm. These are no longer overlooked. They become part of your strength. Before chasing your next goal, you pause. You look around. You realize that you've already made it through things that once felt impossible. you've already grown in ways you didn't expect. And that awareness changes how you move forward. Gratitude doesn't make life easier, but it makes it meaningful. And meaning is what keeps you going when things get hard. From that foundation, another layer begins to take shape: your character. Because at the end of everything, beyond success, beyond recognition, beyond external achievement, what truly remains is who you are. Character is not built in public moments. It's not built in what you say. It's built in what you choose, especially when no one is watching. It's in the small decisions that seem insignificant at the time, but over time, define your identity. Think about it. Do you keep your word when you keep your word? Do you stay honest when no one will ever make you? Do you choose what's right even when it costs you something? These are the moments where character is formed. Not in big, visible actions, but in quiet consistency, in integrity, in discipline. Because character is not something you can fake. You can project an image, but eventually, your actions reveal the truth. The Stoics believed that virtue was the highest form of success, that no amount of external achievement could replace integrity. And that idea still holds today. Because what does it really mean to succeed if you lose yourself in the process? If you compromise your values, your honesty, your principles, what are you actually building? Character asks a different question. Not, how do I look? But, who am I becoming? Working on your character daily means examining your motives. It means being honest with yourself about why you want what you want. Are you chasing something to impress others? Or are you building something that aligns with your values? It means choosing kindness when it's easier to be harsh. Choosing honesty when it's easier to lie. Choosing discipline when it's easier to avoid responsibility. These choices may not always be visible, but they shape everything. And over time, something powerful happens. When your inner values align with your external actions, you become steady, unshakable. Criticism loses its weight because you know who you are. Rumors don't break you because you're grounded in truth. You stop needing constant validation because your standards come from within. That is a different kind of confidence, one that doesn't depend on approval. Because in the end, everything external fades. Success fades. Appearance fades. Recognition fades. But your character, that stays. It becomes your legacy. It becomes the foundation of how you are remembered and how you experience your own life. And that is why it must be built intentionally every single day. There is one final layer that ties everything together, and it is often the one people overlook the most: inner peace. On Stoicism Breath, peace is not something fragile that depends on perfect conditions. It is not something that only exists when life is calm, when everything goes your way, or when nothing is challenging you. Real peace is something deeper. It is the kind that remains even when things fall apart. It is the kind that stays when plans fail, when people disappoint you, when life feels uncertain. Because true peace is not found outside of you, it is built within you. Most people spend their lives chasing external calm. They believe peace will come when they make more money, find the right relationship, or finally eliminate stress from their lives. But that kind of peace is temporary. It disappears the moment something goes wrong. The Stoic perspective offers something different. It teaches that peace begins the moment you stop running from discomfort, from uncertainty, from reality. Because the more you try to control everything around you, the more unstable you feel. But when you shift your focus inward, something changes. You begin to realize that while you cannot control the world, you can control how you respond to it. And that response becomes your power. Working on your inner peace daily means protecting your mind from unnecessary noise. It means not allowing every opinion, every headline, every argument to take up space inside you. It means becoming more selective with what you give your attention to. Because attention is energy. And wherever your attention goes, your emotional state follows. When you learn to step back, to observe instead of react, to choose calm instead of chaos, you begin to build a kind of stability that is not easily shaken. And this does not mean pretending that nothing hurts. It does not mean ignoring reality. Real inner peace is built through discipline, not denial. It is the ability to say, "This is difficult, but it does not control me." It is the strength to remain centered even when emotions rise, even when situations feel overwhelming. And that kind of strength is trained. It is built in small daily moments, through breathing, through reflection, through choosing your response instead of letting it choose you. Every morning, there is an opportunity to reset. A simple breath. A quiet reminder. The world owes you nothing, but you owe yourself peace. That mindset alone can shift how you approach the entire day. Instead of expecting everything to go perfectly, you prepare yourself to remain steady no matter what happens. You accept what you cannot control, and you focus on what you can. That is where clarity comes from. That is where resilience grows. Because peace is not found in comfort, it is found in perspective. It is the ability to stay calm when others react, to stay focused when life delays your plans, to stay grounded when things feel unfair. And in those moments, something powerful happens. You stop being pulled in every direction by external chaos. You begin to move with intention, with clarity, with control. Inner peace is not passive. It is active strength. It is the discipline to pause when everything inside you wants to react. It is the patience to keep going when everything feels slow. It is the clarity to choose kindness when others choose negativity. And over time, this becomes your foundation. You become the person who stays calm while others fall apart. The person who continues forward while others stop. The person who responds instead of reacts. There is a simple truth at the center of all of this. You cannot control the world, but you can control your response to it. And that response shapes your experience of everything. That response becomes your peace. And that peace becomes your power. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are building something. You are either building habits that strengthen you or habits that weaken you. You are either training your mind to rise or conditioning it to surrender. And in today's world, filled with distraction, noise, and constant pressure, choosing discipline, silence, patience, and peace is not just self-improvement. It is a form of rebellion. It is choosing depth over distraction, growth over comfort, transformation over validation. And that path is not always understood. There will be moments when others don't see what you're doing, when they question your choices, when they misunderstand your silence, your focus, your discipline. But that is part of the process. Growth often looks strange to those who are not pursuing it. And the willingness to be misunderstood is part of becoming something greater. At the end of it all, everything comes back to these core principles. Your mind, your emotions, your discipline, your purpose, your self-control, your patience, your silence, your gratitude, your character, and your inner peace. These are not just ideas. They are practices. And when you commit to them daily, they begin to shape a life that is not perfect, but strong, clear, and grounded. Each morning becomes a new opportunity. Each challenge becomes a chance to grow. Each moment becomes a choice. And slowly, day by day, you begin to build yourself into someone different, someone stronger, someone calmer, someone wiser. Because in the end, you are not just living your life, you are designing it. You are shaping it through every thought, every action, every decision. You are the architect of who you become. And when you understand that, everything changes. Every day, you rise with intention. Every day, you move forward with purpose. And every day, you become a little more unshakable than you were before.